When we talk about intelligence and investigation in a professional setting, the key difference really comes down to this. Investigation is about gathering raw facts, and intelligence is about making sense of those facts. Investigation tells us what happened. Intelligence helps us understand why it happened and where we should focus our efforts next. Let's break that down a bit. An investigation is the structured search for information. It's the interviews, the documents, the digital records, all the things we collect to figure out whether something did or didn't occur. Think of it as the search and discovery phase. It's objective, it's methodical, and its job is to build a factual foundation. Intelligence, on the other hand, is the interpretation layer. It's the part where we look at the information we've gathered and ask, what does this actually mean? Where should we go next? What patterns are emerging? Intelligence helps us focus our resources instead of wandering around in a blind fishing expedition. It turns scattered facts into a structured truth-seeking mission. Intelligence also acts as a strategic roadmap. It tells us which investigative tools to use, whether we need surveillance, deeper research, or targeted interviews, and in what order. And sometimes, intelligence comes from confidential sources. When that happens, we treat it as intelligence only, not evidence. We don't rely on it directly in our findings. Instead, we use it to engineer clean investigative paths that lead us to primary evidence we can use. There's also something called speculative intelligence. This is where we do advanced research on a subject to understand their mindset, their level of desperation, or their motivation. It's especially important in cases involving potential workplace violence, because it helps us anticipate behavior and build empathy while still protecting safety. Now, here's a common mistake. Some investigators think the job is done once they've gathered a pile of facts. But information gathering is not the finish line, it's just phase 3. The real work happens in phase 4, verification and analysis. This is where we test the information through investigative interviews. We compare what the subject says with what we already know. We look for contradictions, expansions, or confirmations. We also try to get what's called the pure version of events. That means starting with open-ended questions to hear the subject's story in their own words, without leading them. Then we follow up with more direct questions to identify any gaps, omissions, or deceptions. To interpret facts properly and avoid falling into personal bias, investigators rely on structured analytical tools. One is the index of suspicion, sometimes called the investigative nose. Experienced investigators develop an instinct for motive and intent, and they can spot patterns in what looks like chaos. Another tool is the method of multiple working hypotheses. Instead of locking onto one theory, we build several competing ones, even contradictory ones, and then work to eliminate them one by one. This prevents tunnel vision and keeps us honest. We also analyze internal controls. A lot of misconduct happens because someone found a way around a policy or a system. Part of interpretation is figuring out where those failure points were and how they were exploited, so the organization can prevent it from happening again. But interpretation comes with risks. Tunnel vision is a big one when an investigator becomes so attached to one theory or one suspect that they ignore anything that doesn't fit. Confirmation bias is another, when we unconsciously look for evidence that proves our initial suspicion and overlook evidence that supports the respondent. And we have to be careful with demeanor. Modern standards are very clear. Demeanor shows emotion, not deception. Fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, nervousness, these are often just stress reactions or cultural differences. Interpreting them as lying is a serious mistake. So, the bottom line is this: investigation gathers the facts, but intelligence helps us understand them. When we combine both properly, we get investigations that are focused, fair, and far more accurate.